Hello everyone and welcome back to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett along with Kent Myers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues, and today we welcome back an old friend.
Yes, we welcome back Secretary of State Chris Benge to talk to us about his relatively new duties as Secretary of State. He assumed that position a year or so ago and has been operating now very efficiently in Oklahoma, trying to keep the citizens taken care of, as the Secretary of State must do. And we're going to talk to him about just what does that involve.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting show. Chris Benge, today's guest on The Verdict. We'll be right back.
I like the idea of improvisation and starting with not a preconceived idea. All of my work is about visual images taken from my memory. I'm Brenda Kingery. I am an artist and I'm a proud Chickasaw. One time I said, "Oh God, please don't let me die with my paintings in the closet." And what I would want them to be is everywhere. I would want them to be loved, to be used, to be respected. You work your whole life doing this. You just keep going as long as you can. And I have such a good background with a 106-year-old grandmother that I've always thought in my mind I would just paint till I'm 106. My Chickasaw heritage has become a primary part of my life. And the reason is, it's a place I call home.
See more stories about the Chickasaw people at profilesofanation.com.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
We're really pleased today to welcome, as I said, back to the set of The Verdict, an old friend, Chris Benge, who is the Secretary of State of the state of Oklahoma and also has some additional duties he's going to tell us about here in just a minute. Chris did his undergraduate work at Oklahoma State University. He served 12 years in the House of Representatives here in Oklahoma, and the last 3 years he served as Speaker of the House. He has been involved in other activities such as working with the Tulsa Chamber of Commerce, the mayor's office in Tulsa, and in 2013 Governor Fallin appointed Chris as Secretary of State. He's now coming back to tell us. We're a little late having him on, but we're really pleased he'd come and visit with us about what he's doing. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here with you all.
It is good to have you. Now, You've been in office a couple of years now. Tell us about how that came about. What is the order of procedure for determining who the Secretary of State is in the state of Oklahoma?
Well, it's appointed by the governor, as was mentioned in the introduction, and I got the call from one of her staffers to see if I had any interest, and it's kind of one of those things I thought about, discussed with my wife, prayed about it, and ultimately accepted the offer to be Secretary of State.
As I understand it, the Secretary of State's position differs across the country. Can you kind of give us some examples of how the position in Oklahoma differs from the Secretary of State, say, in another state?
Well, most of the Secretaries of State around the nation are elected, and Oklahoma and maybe a handful of other states have appointed positions, so appointed by the governor, and have to be confirmed by the Senate as well, so I had to go through a Senate confirmation hearing, and then you're Secretary of State. You don't have to run for it.
Well, are the duties of the office similar in one state to another, or are Oklahoma's duties specific?
They differ in a lot of ways. Probably the main difference is we don't have elections. We're not over elections in our office, and a lot of the Secretaries of State around the country do elections. They run elections. Of course, we have a state election board, and so we don't do elections. That's a big difference, and then it just varies other than that from different duties.
Chris, I noticed in looking at your bio in preparation for this show that you also not only are Secretary of State, but you have duties dealing with tribal issues, do you not?
That's correct.
Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Last February, the governor asked me to take the Native American Affairs liaison position. This was a position that was created back in, I think, 2011, when the Indian Affairs Commission was eliminated, and in an effort to be more efficient with state government and cut costs, they eliminated the Indian Affairs Commission, and in its place, they created a Native American Affairs liaison that would report directly to the governor. And there was a person who held that position until last year, and she took a job elsewhere. And so the governor asked me to take on those additional duties. And the thought there is that the Secretary of State is seen as the head diplomat, and we have diplomatic relations in a way with the tribes. And so it's under the Secretary of State now. And I personally hope that will be the precedent from here on out.
How does your time divide up on the tribal issues? As I understand, there are water issues, there are always gaming issues, I guess, to discuss. What other issues am I forgetting, and how does that divide up at the time that you relate to the tribes?
You know, it's so this first year, it's taken a lot more time because I have gone out and introduced myself to tribal leaders. So I've spent a lot of time on the road the last 10 months meeting with tribal leaders. And our discussions just, one, I go with a couple points. I want to show respect, and I want to collaborate. I want to see the state and the tribes collaborate on issues. And from there, we end up talking about health care and economic development, job creation, and education, the same kind of issues we deal with mainly at the state.
Right.
And then try to figure out ways maybe we can work together.
Well, and the tribes are major healthcare providers, especially in the rural areas, and job creators. 39 tribes. How many of them have interactions with your office?
Well, we have met with all the leaders at one point or another over the last 10 months. The interaction it's kind of hit and miss. I get invited to events, either parades or stomp dances, or there's intertribal councils that exist. So a lot of the tribes work together as consortiums, and so I get invited to those kind of meetings. It's just kind of hit and miss, and I've really tried to focus on the cultural piece because I know that's really important to them, and I think it's important for us as Oklahomans to know that.
Now, do you have Native American heritage?
I do. I'm part Cherokee.
Okay, so how is that perceived by the non-Cherokee tribe?
You know, I haven't heard any complaints yet.
Is that an asset?
Well, I think it is anyway.
Okay.
You know, I haven't heard any complaints, but I think so far from what I hear, I've been well received out in the
I would think it
community,
would
so,
be.
Yeah.
Well, now, when you're doing these meetings with these various organizations and groups dealing with the Native American heritage, and you receive information that you think is significant, what do you do with it? Do you bring it back to state government and transmit it to the folks affected?
Generally speaking, yes. So we also have a tribal liaison group, people in state government that represent like mental health, health department, healthcare authority, ODOT, or transportation. And we have a quarterly meeting, so we compare notes and talk about what we're hearing out in the tribal communities. And we just try to identify areas that we can help. And so for example, we've done something as little as tried to help lower a speed limit in the Intertribal Council in Miami, which is a consortium of about 8 tribes. They had a speed limit issue out in front of their headquarters, and they asked us if we could help, and we helped do that. It just kind of varies depending on what's on their mind and what comes up. And we also have had some economic development and job discussions with a couple smaller tribes. I've gone back and asked Commerce to get involved, and so we use the assets of the state government and the expertise of state government where it would apply to try to maybe help them out and help the state out.
How does the business community interact with your office?
Well, the filings, of course, are the main piece of what the Secretary of State's office does, and I like to kiddingly tell people we're the file cabinet for the state. And that consists of, in calendar year 14, I believe we had 350,000 filings of LLCs and corporate filings and apostilles and notaries and those kind of things. So anybody that starts a business, they need to file with the Secretary of State's office. Once you're a business, you have to annually file as well. And of course, the whole purpose is we want to make sure that we have names of companies that aren't duplicative. Obviously, that would be very confusing to the business world if you had 2 Acme brick companies.
Yeah.
So we try to, that's the main part of that duty. there. So yeah, we interact with the business community a lot in that regard.
What size staff do you have
We have 29 people right now. 29.
to handle all that?
Yes. Well, that as well as I
other
mentioned,
things.
the other things.
Let's talk
we
about
we
those.
have so we do have we manage the notary filings. So all the notary publics around the state, which I think are around 87,000, which seems like a high amount, but that's 87,000 notaries. So we handle that as well as the Office of Administrative Rules. So the rulemaking process that happens within state agencies, our office, or the Office of Administrative Rules under the Secretary of State's office, handles that process and ends up publishing a register every year to show the rule changes that have happened throughout the agencies.
No matter what the agency might be, the rule changes in that regard would come through your office.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Ultimately.
Ultimately, it would. And the other thing I would mention too, that's a key piece of what we do is international relations. We have an international protocol officer, and we meet with foreign dignitaries when they come to our state, and we've had probably close to 30 visits since I've been in this position. We have recently entertained a group from China, a group from South Korea, and actually today or this week we're going to be entertaining some Japanese to honor the 30th anniversary of the Kyoto and State of Oklahoma sister-state relationship. And so we try to roll out the red carpet, show Oklahoma's best side, and build relationships so that maybe we can, eventually, you hope that it turns into some kind of commerce.
In the second century of being a state, there's got to be a lot of files. I mean, I can't imagine you have every file cabinet sitting in your drawer with every piece of document. Is there a process of digitizing these documents from the past, or is that even relevant or necessary if something's that old to begin with?
We are in the process of digitizing before we had digital, and I don't know where we are in that process, but it's kind of an ongoing thing that our staff tries to work into their other normal duties. But of course, with the advent of electronic filing and digital filing, it has helped us in that, not have a bunch of file cabinets around the office.
Chris Benge is our guest today. He's the Secretary of State for the state of Oklahoma. We'll have more with Chris right after this.
The integrity of our air, land, and water. The energy to power our lives. They all matter.
That's why many oil and natural gas producers across Oklahoma voluntarily implement green completion methods,
Which can capture more of a well's produced gas and reduce emissions up to 90%. Cleaner air, more energy. They both matter. Learn about other ways Oklahoma producers are protecting the air at oerb.com/bothmatter.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and we're talking today with Secretary of State Chris Benge.
Chris, in the prior segment, you used the phrase electronic filing that I know is relatively new, not completely new, but tell us what your office does in relation to allowing citizens to file things electronically rather than having to drive to Oklahoma City to your office to do it.
Well, like a lot of other businesses and state government, we've made that offering online for people to file most of the filings online. There may be a couple of exceptions there, but most of our filings are offered online. We are up to, out of total filings, we have around 53 or 54% now of the total filings are done online. And we're seeing that grow, and we expect that's going to continue to grow as people get more comfortable with that way of filing. We still do, it does still require some work on our part to kind of walk people through that process sometimes. So our employees do spend a lot of time on the phone trying to help people get through that, but we think that's just going to continue to grow, and it's so much more convenient. It has saved some costs for the office, and it's also saved time for the public.
Do you have any satellite offices besides Oklahoma City?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. We have recently, and are actually in the process of moving our main business filing unit to the Colcord Center, which is at 13th and about Walker. And we're doing that because we want to be more accessible to the public. If you ever, of course, you've been to the Secretary of State's office, you know that little room there where we receive gets pretty congested and kind of actually overflows quite a bit. 18,500 walk-ins again last year. And so we are moving our business filers to the Colcord Center to be able to be more accessible to the public. And they won't have to find parking around the Capitol grounds, which is difficult sometimes, and then have to go through all the process of just getting in the Capitol. So no satellite, but we do have 2 locations now. Myself and 4 other employees will be in the Capitol. Of course, I have to be in the Capitol, close to the governor. And then the business filers will go outside the Capitol.
I also know that your office has involvement in the handling of initiative petitions. Can you explain what that relationship is?
So we have the main ministerial part of that duty, which is when someone wants to file a petition to change the law or change the Constitution, they come to our office, we receive it, we process it, and then we publish to the public that there is a question out there that can be challenged. And then we, from there, we kind of just handle that whole process, other than what the courts, ultimately, if they have to get involved, they have to decide. But then we also count the signatures. And if someone gets enough signatures that they want to bring it to the office, we have to count it.
Yeah, tell us about that. Do you have people on your staff that are, in charge of the counting, or do you have to hire additional people?
We have to hire temporary people to come in and help. And the way that works is we have a main person who's over that process, who manages the process, and when we need to count signatures, we'll hire temps to come in and help. They do a half-a-day training, so they know what to look for, and then they start counting signatures. And then we basically put it in a booklet form, so that if it has to be taken to the court, the court has it where it's very easy to deal with and read, and they can do whatever they have to do with it.
So in the initiative petition process, you really have a communication with a number of different folks. You communicate with the Supreme Court back and forth following its rules. You communicate with the parties, either a proponent of a petition or perhaps a protestant of a petition. And
as well as the AG.
As well as the AG's
AG has
office,
to look at the ballot title.
Is the number of initiative petitions you're handling now staying relatively constant? Is it declining or increasing, or can you tell?
It's kind of hard to tell what that trend would be. I mean, we've had one to date that we've actually had to count signatures, and that was the medical marijuana petition last year. The medical marijuana they filed another one, and actually they're out gathering signatures right now. And then of course we have the education sales tax piece that has been filed, and it's been in front of the court. And so it's kind of hard to say historically how it really compares.
Well, does your office challenge the validity of the signatures, or are you all responsible for just counting?
We can. But it's really basic. It's a name and an address and contact information that we look for. We don't check to see if they're citizens of Oklahoma. But we do have the ability to throw some out. And so with the medical marijuana, for example, they actually brought to us about 88,000. We threw out about 13,000, so 75,000 and some change.
Any examples for reasons that something would be thrown out?
Just not a full name, or not an address, or just that basic information, leaving a line blank.
Do you read
things like that?
Do you read the signatures for sense? For instance, I know there are 20 signatures on each petition that is filed.
Yes.
What if you had 20 signatures all saying Mickey Mantle?
Well, yes.
20 times.
That would be thrown out. Obviously, those kind of things would be thrown out. Sure.
Okay, so once you've counted them, and let's say the signatures are there, and from that first look, it appears that the number of signatures are there. Someone else comes in and says, we want to challenge that. What happens then?
Well, of course, the first thing we'll do is we'll send it on to the court, and then the court will review, and that's where they look for, make sure they're citizens of Oklahoma, and do further diligence about who these people are.
So there's more government oversight before anyone would set up a challenge.
Right, right, and then once if the signatures, if there are enough signatures, if the court says there are enough signatures, then we have to publish again to the public to let them know that this has cleared that hurdle. And then there's an opportunity for the public to protest the signatures. So.
What other projects are you looking at in your office, perhaps in the way of expanding existing duties or taking on additional duties?
Well, we don't have any what I would call necessarily additional projects, but we have, we've covered some of the new duties, and of course the tribal piece has been a big piece of that, and I think we're still looking and looking for ways how to expand that and be more proactive on that front, as well as the international piece that I mentioned as well. I would like for us to be more intentional about how we interact with our international people that we have international relations with, and not necessarily taking trips overseas, but we have honorary consuls in Houston, for example, that we could maybe go meet occasionally. As well as just some constant communication. Relationship building's about communication and getting to know each other, and so we would like to do that, be more intentional about that.
I don't know whether it just comes from the people you hire or it's inculcated in them from the top down, but there's a general recognition in the community in which I spend a lot of time that the employees of the Secretary of State's office are the most helpful. Or at least among the most helpful of any in state government in trying to help citizens do what they want to do. They may not know how to do it, but your employees are gracious, they're helpful, they're friendly, and they give good information.
Sure. Well, that's good. I appreciate that. And we do try to talk about how, the business community, somebody that's in our office filing for something, they're not able to be out making a profit. There's an opportunity cost there. And so we talk about that on a regular basis and what that means. And so we're always trying to get them in and out as quickly as possible. And we don't want to be that bureaucracy that gets in the way of somebody being profitable.
You have held elective office, and this is an appointed position. Do you have an opinion on whether or not the Secretary of State's office should be an elected position or an appointed position?
I favor the appointed position myself. I mean, I think that it affords someone to be an advisor to the governor, as well as work with the legislature, and not be seen as having any kind of political motives. I think that's the big advantage of having being appointed, and of course my background in history allows me. That's part of the reason the governor asked me to come join her team. Is I've been in the legislative process, and so I can I know how the folks on the fourth floor think, and so I get to interact, but I don't have to worry about people thinking I'm doing it for political reasons, because I'm appointed. And so I think the elected side of it would, having another statewide elected, I don't know. I personally couldn't come up with a strong reason why you would want another statewide elected person, to be honest with you.
Chris Benge is our Secretary of State. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the verdict and explaining what the office is doing and the additional responsibilities that the governor has asked you to take care of.
Good to be here with you, and I'd love to come back sometime.
We appreciate it.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we return.
There are now 11 million of us who live here and work here. I was 15 when I came here 6 years ago. I raised my family here. I drive my truck to my job every day. The only difference between now and 6 years ago, I do it legally. I wanted to. Because this is my home.
All children deserve a life of hope and love. but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
I think for us, once we got started and we began to see the tremendous need just within our state, it really was just a calling for us. The blessings far outweigh any obstacles that we've faced.
You will always be mom and dad to me.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Camp Myers. We're wrapping up a show with Chris Benge. You know, dealing with state government, you have this feeling that you might run into all this bureaucracy. It's good to know we have a guy like Chris in there to kind of break some of that down.
Well, it really is, and anybody that has any kind of significant experience with the Secretary of State's office, I think, recognizes that when you walk in there with something you're trying to file or you're trying to do it online, you may not know exactly how you answer all the questions, but he's got staff there that not only will answer the questions for you and help you, but they're pleasant doing it, and they make you realize that they are state employees working for the citizens of the state, and you come away, at least my experience has been, you come away with a really good feeling about the way that office is run. Yeah. And that emanates from the top, of course.
Of course it does. And interesting, if you need website information about Chris's office, I love their email address. It's SOS for Secretary of State, not saving our ships, but say Secretary of State .ok.gov, sos.ok.gov. And we have a website, theverdict.tv. Love for you to go there and tell us about a guest you'd like to see on a future edition. We'll see you next week.